Hello, hello, hello. Let's get started. Chapter 16. Woolruff Again. "It's hopeless," said Derek. Mandelbrot was trying to patch their hole. "It's got to work," Ariel said, biting her lip behind her helmet. "Otherwise Woolruff—" The other Star Seeker had been hit harder than their own, and was scarcely maneuverable. Mandelbrot, using rockets welded onto his body and a line gun, had brought them close together, with Ariel doing most of the maneuvering. There was very little air in either ship, and there was no spacesuit for the cannonoid alien. "We've been stressed too severely. The best we can do is temporary patching." Derek tried to rub his head, and his hand encountered his helmet for the 15th time. Frustrated, he let it drop. "If it holds long enough to jump out of here," she said. Derek shook his head. "4 jumps to Robot City, 5 for safety," he said. "That's days of work checking courses and calculating. I wouldn't want my life to depend on that kind of patching. And we'll be maneuvering. That'll strain the patches even more. Something's got to be done. Maybe Random's ship—" Jumping at straws, and she knew it. "Even Woolruff doesn't know how to really fly it, assuming any of us had the arm reach for that control board. No computer aid, Ariel." She nodded somberly. "I know it's not possible. And these ships are nothing. Maybe there's air or food over there. We could use both." They looked at each other somberly. It was not a pleasant position. On a wrecked ship, barely maneuverable, with most of its instrumentation out, leaking like a proverbial sieve, on a trajectory that would take it somewhere near Prison in a few million years. Short on air, water, and food, with a friend on another, worse ship, sealed in a single room. "Join the space service and see the stars," Derek said, forcing a grin. Ariel grinned back, just as wanly. The alien ship was all around them, and some of the pieces definitely had once been living. Derek, feeling none too good to start, avoided looking at them, though they were at such a distance that the details were lost. His imagination supplied them. Many were Narwi, but there was a goodly number of the starship-shaped dwellers in darkness he had glimpsed in his brief time aboard the ship. "I'm amazed they aren't trying for something," he said again. They'd both been saying that for nearly an hour. "Derek, I think they're all gone." "It could be, but dead?" he said. "Many were." Ariel shook her head, though. "I don't think so. I think they must have jumped out at the height of the battle." Leaning forward, Derek eagerly scanned such of the surroundings as were visible, trying to count the holes. It was no use. I don't know how many holes there were, and they all looked different now. The central one, I suppose, had the hyper-atomic motors. Maybe some of the other holes did, too. I don't think there's more than one hole missing, though." "You agree, then?" she asked, worried. "I agree," he said. "Knowing Randomus, if you're alive in here, would be shooting at us. With something." "Yes." She was silent for a moment. "It's not likely that all the damage could have been done by Mandelbrot." Woolruff had dropped the robot off when she had braked sufficiently to bring the relative motion of the ships down to a level Mandelbrot's rockets could handle. The robot had made a landing on the alien ship, damaging one knee joint, and had swarmed all over it, planting explosive charges at the joins of the holes. The mighty ship had simply broken up. "We already know that there were explosive charges at the hull connections," Derek said. "Randomus had dropped one of his holes to make his escape at Rockcliffe Station. Yes, he must have blown them all, got his central hole free, and jumped. If he jumped blind, he could be anywhere in this universe," Derek said. "Let's hope he never finds his way back." It wasn't something they could count on. Half an hour later, Mandelbrot called them on the radio, and suggested they go lock to lock with Woolruff's ship. Presently Ariel brought them together, Mandelbrot guiding them, and the open airlocks grated together. They were compatible, and with a little nudging clacked into position. "This joint will not hold air long," observed the robot. "We must charge it, and Woolruff must move fast, despite the bag." They had been pumping their leaking air into bottles, to save at least some of it. Derek took one of the bottles to the lock, shoved its bag a nut fitting into the lock's emergency valve, and opened the bottle. Presently Woolruff banged on the inner door, and the outer door clanked shut behind her. Derek let the air continue to hiss to equalize pressure, but the bottle went empty first. Muttering, he jerked it out of the emergency valve, which closed automatically, and turned to the manual spill valve. It took a good grip to hold that open, but after a moment pressure was equal and they hadn't lost too much of their precious air. Woolruff entered in a transparent plastic balloon, now half deflated under cabin pressure. She looked a little short of breath, or scared. Derek certainly couldn't blame her. It could not have been easy to flounder and free-fall inside that balloon, through the other ship and the twinned locks. The little cannonade emerged from the released zipper with a shake, saying, "Oh, thank you. It was a nervous time. I have great fear of the Annie." "We think our animus is gone," said Ariel.
"I hope so, but I do not understand."
Ariel explained tersely.
"He would shoot if he could,"
Woolruff agreed. Mandelbrot's voice came out over the radio. "I will enter the other ship and bring forth items I can," he said. "You will need more organic feedstock for the food synthesizers, and of course, air. Perhaps it would be wise to explore the alien ship also." That was a thought. It made Derek more than a little nervous, and he could see Ariel wasn't much happier. "That wreckage is grinding around a good bit. Still, the bigger pieces are getting further and further away from each other," she said. "It should be safe, as things go." "That apartment back on Earth looks more and more cozy every minute," said Derek with a weak laugh.
"I stay behind and fly ship," said Woolruff. "I glad to do this. Do not thank me."
Laughing crazily, they floundered into their suits and crowded into the airlock with Woolruff's plastic bag. Normally it was used to convey perishable items across vacuum. Now they pumped it up to half cabin pressure, pushed it up against the inner door of the lock, and started the lock pumps. As soon as lock pressure fell below half cabin pressure, the bags began to push them against the outer door. Their suits braced them against this push, and the expansion of the balloon speeded the removal of air outside the bag from the lock. When the outer door was open they were shoved out, Ariel just quick enough to grab a handhold on the door, Derek grabbing her foot. Laughing again, they shoved the balloon back inside and slammed the lock. Their first item was to transfer the undamaged antennas of Woolruff's ship to their own, and to replace the burnt out or smashed eyes. The two ships floated near to each other, linked by the light, strong line. Derek had brought tools and also made a stopgap repair on Mandelbrot's knee. An hour of work saw that completed, while the pieces of the alien ship got further and further away. They squeezed back inside the ship to rest, recharge their air, and eat. Ariel said tiredly, "How did you come to be here, near Earth, Woolruff?" The cannonade snapped hungrily at synthetic cabbage.
"When you jump with key, I hear static hyperwave. I hear two bursts and I get fixed on one. I expect it to be Robot City, but is not. We know coordinates of Robot City. It's a long way away, but Mandelbrot and I jump to follow. Dangerous one long jump, but we dare not make more or we lose bearings. So's one jump all we take."
She paused to gulp more food. They were used to her table manners.
"When we arrive at Earth, Mandelbrot make identification. He listen to broadcast, hyperwave still not working, and tell me is Earth, and explain Earth. We do not have to wonder for long if this is where you went with key. I hear two more bursts static close together, same place. Earth, I know not now you use key so close together."
"Simple," said Derek. He was tired and felt his head felt unduly light, even more than free fall would explain. "The key was focused on that apartment. Using it to leave any place else, even on the same planet, takes you back to the apartment. We won't starve. If necessary, we can always go back to number 21, subcorridor 16, corridor M, subsection G, section 5 of Webster Groves in St. Louis City."
"Anyway, we wait. After a while, though, we detect hyperwave burst of our enemy's ships arriving, and we know there will be trouble. You also detect key use."
"How long has he known how to do that?" Ariel asked.
Woolruff shrugged. "Possibly he always knew. Our enemy's not one for saying all he knew. More likely he learned since we left him at Rockleaf Station. It's obvious when you think about it.
How so? Ariel asked sharply.
Obviously, he must be hypertonic motor,
said Woolruff, and Derek interrupted. I don't think so. The robots of Robot City learned to duplicate them. They may even have made the key we have. I don't think humans or their robots could duplicate any such radical advance in science and technology as would be represented by the reduction of a hyperatomic motor to pocket size. I think the keys are very compact hyperwave radios. These subetherics trigger the hyperatomic motors, which are elsewhere, and focused on the keys.
Ah, you think motors are Imperialian?
Woodruff was a starship pilot too, and knew the theory of hyperatomics. Probably, said Derek. The cannonoid made a sound of interest, paused to eat more, and resumed her tale after pondering Derek's conclusion.
Anyway, we all sat there waiting, and our enemies sat there waiting. We expected you to use the key and escape. Our enemies must have been chewing nails and spitting rivets, and you could not know what was going on, and Earth too big even for a reckless one like him to attack.
How did you know we were us? Ariel asked, and Derek, head throbbing, tried to follow the logic of her sentence.
When you used our hyperwave radio, he must have known. Our enemies burn to intercept, and we follow him. He fortunate to be closer by half a solar orbit to get in there first. Our enemies not stop to think how lucky he'd be to have rock to hide behind, going just his way almost as fast as he is. Only mistake he ever make.
Derek hoped it would be his last. What did you do to his ship, though? Ariel asked, exasperated.
Blew up. All time we were in orbit, we were making explosives. Carbonite recipe and Dr. Avery's ship bank data. I know enough chemistry to add oxidizer, had to use food synthesizer feedstock, but only one of me to feed, and I small.
The robots had no doubt needed carbonite for the building of Robot City. Derek knew generally how it was made. It was a super form of black powder, activated charcoal saturated with potassium nitrate or sodium nitrate. Since the carbon was all nearly burned up, it approached 100% efficiency and was therefore nearly smokeless. Carbonite was about 10 times as powerful as TNT.
Even so, it would not work if the enemies had not panicked and jumped, but he could not know what was happening.
Derek nodded, immediately wished he hadn't. The room seemed to spin. His panic is understandable, he said.
Are you all right?
Woodruff asked. No, but I'm not getting worse. I mean, I'm feeling no worse than before the battle. Ariel broke in to explain about the chemfets, and Woolruff was concerned but unable to help. She knew nothing of robots, nor did any race she knew of, save humans.
I hope you will be well,
she said, but clearly had her doubts. She seemed shaken by the idea of this invasion. Derek thought of it as a disease, and at least had the hope that the chemfets were programmed with 3 laws. Shall we go? He asked. He turned and found Mandelbrot looking at him. What do you intend to do about this infestation? The robot asked. Go to Robot City and either turn the problem over to the human medical team or seize Dr. Avery and force him to reverse it, or both. I see. I can think of nothing better, for I do not believe that the medical and/or robotic resources of Aurora or the other spacer worlds would be adequate to the task of eradicating chemfets, Mandelbrot said. That, then, must remain purely as a final resort.
Right, said Woolruff. We go find Dr. Avery. He worse than our enemies.
The next step was to explore the alien ship. They cast off from Woolruff's Star Seeker and jettisoned likely toward one of the larger, more intact hulls. They carried clubs, and Ariel a little knife from the galley, but they found it airless and had little fear of survivors. There were none, as it turned out. Nor were there all that many bodies.
Our enemies must have sounded the recall and called him to the main hull, Woolruff said. They would be valuable to him, of course.
Still, a good number of innocent Narwhal, and not so innocent starfish folk, had died in the battle. They found nothing of immediate use in the first 2 holes, and became depressed. "We must have air, if nothing else," Mandelbrot said, "and we should also find some organic feedstock for the synthesizers. It is, you tell me, 5 jumps to Robot City. It will take at least 3 weeks, and then there is a final approach, and a reserve against emergencies. This hull will not hold air for 3 days. It can be patched up more, but probably not enough to hold air for more than a week. We will need 4 complements there, and even so I must spend every moment patching to the dump." "You'll be patching after every jump," Derek said grimly. Mandelbrot was right. They returned to the search, though the holes were getting far apart now. The next hull had been occupied by the starfish folk, and they immediately gave up hope of finding air here. The strange aliens breathed a mix containing a sulfur compound that Woolruff called yellow gas. On the way out, though, they found a robot. At Ariel's cry, Derek shook his head and took a deep breath. The robot, when he came into the open chamber where she was, seemed a breath of sanity and unreality. The shot-up spaceship in free fall and airless was like an etcher print of an upside-down world. The body of one of the starfish folk was stuck to one wall, a vicious-looking energy piston in one tentacled grip. Ariel and the robot were spinning slowly in the vacuum, drifting toward a bulkhead. She had leaped to seize it. "It's dysfunctional," she said. Timing his moves with hers, he intercepted them at the bulkhead and they turned their lights on it. It made no move, but whether it was speaking or not they could not tell. Mandelbrot entered while they were examining the robot's body. "Energy scoring on the head and a few marks here and there, mostly on the body. It looks like the starfish over there shot it up during the battle." "How did it come to be in the ship?" Ariel asked. I suppose Aranimus must have come upon it somewhere and captured it." "Where could he have found it?" Derek considered. "Possibly it's the one he found at the ice asteroid, but I doubt it. He was desperate for me to make him a robot. He'd have given me all the parts he had." Mandelbrot fixed his cold eyes on the damaged robot. "This is a robot from Robot City." "Yes." The design style was unmistakable to the trained eye. "Let's get it into the air. Maybe it's trying to speak," said Ariel. But back in the Star Seeker it lay as inert as before. Removing his spacesuit, Derek got out the toolkit and looked at Mandelbrot. The prospect of work on the robot made him feel better than he had in days. A matter of interest, they quickly learned that power to the brain was off. Re-energizing it, though, did no good. "A near miss from an energy beam might well cause brain burnout without visibly damaging the brain," said Mandelbrot. The postronic brain was a platinum uranium sponge with a high refractivity. It wouldn't melt easily, but the postronic paths through it were not so resistant. "So we can learn nothing from questioning it," Derek said, dejected. "Wait a minute. What's this?" Clenched tightly in its fist was a shiny object. A shiny, rectangular object. "A key to perihelion," said Mandelbrot expressionlessly. "Aranimus would have taken it away from the robot if he'd known he'd had one," said Ariel. "I wonder what the robot was doing with it." "We'll never know. Maybe it took the first moment it wasn't under observation to try to use the key, and the starfish caught it in the act." Derek gripped the key and pulled it out of the fist. Instantly he knew it was different. "Feels like 2 keys built together." "It is," said Mandelbrot, peering at it. "One, I suppose, to take the robot from Robot City, one to return him to Robot City." "Which is which?" Ariel asked. Derek and Mandelbrot spent a few minutes determining that. They found that one key had a cable plug in one end. "I see," Ariel said, when they showed her. "A tiny cable with 5 tiny prongs. This must be for reprogramming. I don't know what would plug into it." "Something like a calculator," said Derek, "to enable one to input the coordinates of the destination." The other key had no provision for changing its programming, and was therefore set permanently on Robot City. "Not that it does us any good," said Ariel wistfully. "It's initialized for a robot. Too bad. We desperately need to get to Robot City. Especially Derek. And only Mandelbrot can get there." "That is true. Derek must go to Robot City soon, and the key is better than 3 weeks in a ship, even if the ship did not leak." said Mandelbrot. "I will take you there, Derek." He wrapped his normal arm around Derek, half carrying him. "What about us?" Ariel cried. "The ship is no safer for Woodruff and me." Mandelbrot's mutable ivory design arm was already stretching into a long tentacle. "That is correct. It is very likely that you and Woodruff will die if you do not accompany us," he said. "Therefore I shall have to take you all." The tentacle coiled about Ariel and Woodruff and splayed out into a small hand at the end. "The key, if you please, Derek." Derek placed the doubled key in the small hand. "At least Dr. Avery won't be expecting us," he said.
"He'll find out soon, though,"
said Woodruff. Mandelbrot extruded another finger from the hand that held the key to perihelion. It rose up and pressed, in sequence, the corners of the key, and waited for the activating button to appear. Knowing it was irrational, Derek felt the air getting staler in the tiny pace of time it took. Then perihelion. And then a planetary sky burst blue and brilliant above them. They were breathing deeply, standing atop the compass tower, the mighty pyramid that reared over Dr. Avery's robot city. And thus ends this book. Thank you very much for joining. As always, I will skip a week of videos for the end of the book. So the next episode will be next Tuesday. Not next Tuesday, the Tuesday after next Tuesday. And then after that I'm going to go just one per week again, since I'm going to have lots and lots of testing in April and May. So I'll move back to 2 videos a week at the end of May. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope you're all going to have a fantastic week. Bye!